Find your seats. We'll have our guests of honor come up to the stage momentarily. I would like to try and get us started for as close to 6:30 as possible so that I can respect everybody's time. The plan is to be started for 6:30 to be able to wrap by about 8, at which point in time you do not have to go home, but you'll just have to leave here. So a little bit of housekeeping as our guests are coming up. We're going to have prosecuting attorneys here at the red table, judges at the white table, clerks at the blue table. The general format will be an introduction. Then we're going to ask questions to each of the candidates pertinent to their position. Each candidate will be given about a 2-minute window to answer said question. To respect time, we're probably not going to do a rebuttal because if you figure 2 minutes per person, and we've got 6 people up here, that's a 12-minute window, so about every 15 minutes we're just getting one question, so we're hoping to maybe get 4 or 5 questions across the board. If at all possible and we're able to open it up to questions in the audience, I would ask that the questions be pertinent to the position so that both the incumbent and the challenger can actually answer the question. If you have something that's just directly aimed at a person, I would ask you to hold that for either social media, emailing, something to that effect, maybe the public forum. I also want to remind people that coming up on July 21st, same bat time, same bat channel here, we will have the county commissioner debates, so do mark your calendars for that. When y'all came in, there were some Chris Ann Hall flyers. So let me back up a little bit. My name's Jeremy Spring. I'm with We the People of Camden County as the current chairperson. And with me as esteemed guests is Les Larson from the Republican Club and John Beckett from Central Committee. We have all worked together because one of the things we do care about is you guys as a community need to be able to come in, sit down, hear from our potential elected officials, because these people behind me are the ones who will exercise the most power in our everyday life here in the community, even more so than whoever happens to be in a White House 2,000 plus miles away. That is a very important thing, but that's every 4 years, and these people you're going to run into at possibly Walmart and Gerb's. So it's more important to get to know them than to worry about what's being done out there. And I thank you all for coming in. So to the point of the White House and even our elected officials here, we like to talk about things called the Constitution, our state's rights, our rights as individuals. There will be some questions pertaining to that. The Chris Ann Hall, she is a constitutional attorney. We the people are bringing her in. The flyers are out there. That's going to be June 22nd over at the Camden First Baptist, just up the road. So do grab a flyer, share with your friends. Our chapter has actually made the cost pretty nominal compared to some of the other chapters where adults are $5 and 17 and under accompanied by a paying adult is free. If you need to use the restroom, you can step right out to the lobby, turn left. They're located in that corner over there. I think that has covered most everything, and we've got all of our people now seated, eagerly awaiting our grilling. Oh yes, absolutely. This fine AV tech hiding up there, his name is Gary, is part of the school, and we appreciate Troy Reisner and the school board for helping to arrange us to get this venue. I think it's especially great because, well, I don't even have children here, but I do care about this organization because, let's face it, our kids in this community are the future of the community, so it's great that we can do this here, and hopefully for the commissioners, we can get more young people involved as well. Anything else you can think of? What's that? Oh, if you could, silence your cell phones. That would be great. If you happen to be either broadcasting on Facebook Live, you're welcome to do that. We have a wonderful tech gentleman also up there. Sean Kober is recording video and audio. And as soon as I find out where we may have a link housed, we can share that with you all. If you happen to either be on a We the People email list, the Republican Club email list, if you happen to be following any of these campaigns here and you're on their email lists, I will get those links to these people so they can send them out to you so you can share this with friends and family. Let's see. I think that covers just about everything. All right. So without further ado, I'm going to step off to the side here so you can see our illustrious guests. And I'm going to allow each one to introduce themselves. If we can keep that to about 2 minutes. And let me see here. I want to go with one of our universal questions. Now, all my questions did come pretty much from public input via Facebook and email responses, which if you have questions for the commissioner, be sure to send those to the respective people and get them to me for the next event. Now, for universal questions, I think one that a lot of people are concerned about at times is, how do you feel about outside money in local elections, and have you taken any money or donations from outside of Camden County? So, with your introduction as to who you are, the position you're running for, what's that? Okay, we're going to start on that end of the room and work our way towards me. So, we'll start with Karen on the end there, so you will be sharing the microphones amongst each other, so we appreciate civility, no throwing, swinging, hitting, anything like that. It'll make great video, but we don't want to do that. So again, about a 2-minute introduction about who you are, the position you're running for, and then how do you feel about outside money in local elections, and have you taken money or donations from anyone outside of Camden County? Karen, we'll start with you. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Karen Clapton. I'm married to my wonderful husband, Philip. We have 3 children and 5 grandchildren. I graduated from Max Creek High School and attended Drury University in Springfield. I have lived most of my life in Camden County, and we own a farm north of Max Creek. I have worked in the Camden County Circuit Clerk's office for 11 years and moved on up to the federal court for 9 years. I was highly recommended by the current circuit clerk and several judges for the federal position. I have had numerous continuing education classes and training through the court system. I am the only candidate that is a federally certified courtroom deputy clerk. I am a true conservative Republican and a candidate for circuit clerk. And as far as, what was the question again? The
question was, how do you feel about outside money in local elections? I gotta get that fired up. I gotta turn it on first. There we go. The question was, how do you feel about outside money in local elections, and have you taken any outside money or donations from outside of Camden County?
I have not taken any money from outside the county or from anyone else for that matter. I'm doing it on my own. I don't think it's necessary to get money from outside sources. I think they want to have control when you do that. I think it should stay right here in Camden County.
Thank you.
Okay. So my name is Kayla Henry. I graduated from Richland High School. After that, I went to work for Camden County. I've been working in Camden County for 15 years. I am married to my wonderful husband. We have 2 kids. We live in southern Camden County on a small farm. I love being outdoors with my kids, and we love riding horses and enjoy all of that. I feel that I am the perfect candidate for circuit clerk. I work well with all the employees. I work well with the judges, everybody who is a part of the judicial system.
And how do you feel about outside money in local elections, and have you received any?
I have not taken any money from outside Camden County. I feel that we should either do it on our own, or if we have support, that we should maybe from our family, and that's what I have done.
Thank you very much. Ryan?
Well, first I want to thank we the people of Camden County Republican Club, and the Camden County Republican Central Committee for hosting this event, and for the school for letting us have it here. My name is Ryan Bridges. I'm a lifelong Camden County resident. After I graduated law school, I came back home to the lake and started raising a family and also starting a practice. In that 15 years of having that practice, I have handled just about every type of law there is. And I think that's vitally important for an associate court judge, because they handle a wide variety of different types of law. And through my 15 years, I've been able to gain that experience. I think with regard to the question, I think if the amount of money that you take in, the sizable amount of it is from outside the county or outside the state, then that can raise some conflict of interest issues. My brother lives in Lee Summit, Missouri. He sent me some money. And my grandmother-in-law lives on W. She also sent me some money. And I grew up on Horseshoe Bend, and I went to Osage, and so we have a couple of, Osage is sort of a mixed County, and so I do have a couple of people that are from Miller County, like my grandmother-in-law in that area, that have sent me some money. But it's all, other than my brother up in Kansas City, it's been local.
Thank you.
Good evening, my name is Heather Miller, and since February of 2021, I've had the honor of serving as your Associate Circuit Judge here in Camden County. I'm a lifelong conservative Republican, and I have done basically my entire legal career here in service of Camden County. I began about a decade ago as an intern in the Camden County Prosecutor's Office. I served there for about 8 years, raising up to the position of elected prosecutor. I served as your elected prosecutor for the last almost 3 years of my term there. I handled everything from seatbelt tickets to murders, from DWI crashes to child pornography. I'm going to be asking for your vote at the end of tonight on August 2nd, and the reason for that comes down to 3 main reasons. Number 1 is experience. I told you a little bit about my experience in the prosecutor's office. During my tenure there, I handled thousands of cases, some of the most complex in the state. In fact, I was tasked to handle cases all over the state because of my experience. Expertise. So experience without expertise isn't worth much, but thankfully, I was granted the opportunity to train with some of the best around the world. I've trained with the FBI as far as forensics. I have trained with nationally recognized accident reconstructionists, forensic interviewers, child interviewers, trauma, strangulation, you name it, and that's important. I've used that expertise to teach. I've taught law enforcement all over the state, here in Camden County, helped found the Missouri State Safety Public Institute, and so have used that expertise also to help the governor on the criminal justice task force. Beyond that, common sense, and that kind of feeds into your question here.
20 seconds.
Which is outside funds. As a judge, there are many relationships within the county. If you have a judge whose judgment you don't trust, who you can't trust to be fair and impartial, then they shouldn't be on the bench. I have taken outside funds because I have a lot of family and friends that live in Springfield. In New Hampshire is my uncle. My parents are from Alaska, so you might see some weird places. But none of my outside funding has come from political action committees or anybody that's not a blood relative of mine.
Thank you very much.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for being here tonight. My name is Cunningham. I'm your current Camden County prosecuting attorney. As you probably can tell by my Yankee accent, I'm not from around here. I am from a little town just north of Mobile, Alabama. I grew up on a farm there. After law school, I was in private practice for a number of years and moved up here to become an assistant prosecuting attorney. I was an assistant prosecuting attorney for a number of years before Governor Parson appointed me to the elected position about a year and a half ago. In that year and a half, in the last 5 months, actually, we have secured 3 life sentences on violent offenders, which I believe is the most in Camden County history. We tried a double murderer, convicted him on all counts during campaign season, of course, and we've got the janitor case that so many of you are familiar with that has hurt this community so much, and he will be sentenced tomorrow in Laclede County. We won all counts of that, the Jesse DeVore case. We also got a life sentence on another sex offender here recently. My team and I have been representing Camden County in all of the criminal matters, from tickets to murders. We have almost 100 years of legal experience between us all, and we're very proud to represent the citizens of Camden County. As for the question that was asked, I have taken outside money, and again, like so many of the other candidates here, they're family and friends from my previous life. The vast majority of my money comes here from Camden County. I think 90% of it comes here from Camden County. I also run a small farm in Max Creek. I have a small cattle operation out there and garden operation. You can't look at awful pictures every day without having some escape, and the farm offers me that escape. It reminds me of my childhood. One of the reasons I picked Camden County is because you do have the hustle and bustle of the lake, but you can certainly get out to Climax Springs or Max Creek or some of the rural areas
20 seconds.
and get in touch with what makes this county so great. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I am Rochelle Christensen Grosvenor. I am running for Camden County Prosecuting Attorney. I just want to say that I appreciate all the condolences. As many of you know, my father passed away last week. For those of you who haven't heard me speak before, my dad was a very young man when he was in a workplace accident and he lost one of his legs. He was only 20 years old, had only been married about 6 weeks. And I'm telling you what, that man, even though he lived the rest of his life in chronic pain and without that leg, he was never disabled. He had a work ethic like nothing that I have ever seen before, and I know for a fact that he would want me to be here tonight to make sure that you all understand how important this prosecutor race is. A little bit about myself. I went to college at CMSU, studied criminal justice and sociology. I got my law degree from Mizzou. 22 years of criminal law experience. Right now I'm in private practice, but I've spent about half of that as a prosecuting attorney, about half of that in private practice. I'm a judge. Our family has been a victim of property crime that cost us over $10,000, so there is no part of the courtroom that I have not been on. I understand all sides of it. I have at least 12 additional years experience in criminal law as my opponent. We talk about experience. I've been the Chief Deputy Assistant Prosecutor. I've been an elected prosecutor. And to specifically address the issue of money, that is, of course, an individual choice with each candidate. I have not and I will not ever take one penny from anybody, and that's simply because I don't believe that that's the right thing to do. And again, this goes back to experience and integrity, but that is something that my dad taught me, is integrity.
10
Making
seconds.
sure that you're doing the right thing regardless of who's around and who's watching. Just do the right thing. And I really am looking forward to answering some additional questions.
Thank you. All right, so I think it's only fair, there was I tried my best as I was going through all of these last night to at least send one question to each of our panel members, because I felt that if they were asked it on the fly, that would be unfair to getting us a good answer as a community. So we're going to start over here at the prosecuting attorney. The question that I did send to both people was, how do you approach the Fourth Amendment in the digital age? For those of you that are perhaps a little behind on the Fourth Amendment, that is being secure in your persons, belongings, papers. And so I am now going to go back to my clock. I apologize. There. And I will give a 3-minute window for this question, and we will start with Rochelle.
The Fourth Amendment basically talks about unreasonable search and seizure. And of course, I'm sure you can imagine every time that I go to training, specifically as a judge, we have case after case after case that tries to define this idea of what is unreasonable. Now, as a general rule, as a prosecuting attorney, you basically have one job, one very important job, and that's to make sure that criminals are held accountable for their crimes. It sounds easy, but it's actually not, and that is why that experience is so important. As I've talked about before, that prosecutor's office has to have that relationship with the police department because you work together. The prosecutor is also that divide between the police and the courts. So basically what happens is that the police go out, and sometimes they are in these split-second situations where they have to make really quick decisions at that time, at that moment. The prosecutor has the ability then to basically armchair quarterback all the police activities, right? But part of that Fourth Amendment is to make sure that you are understanding of it, that you have the training and experience in it, and that you're willing to fight for it. I was an appointed prosecutor for, I think, 2 months, and there was an issue about an unreasonable search and seizure, and the judge actually said, yes, the police did it wrong. I said, no, they didn't, and I appealed that to the Court of Appeals, and the Court of Appeals came back. So imagine, I've been an attorney for basically a year, and the Court of Appeals agreed with me that the police did not do it wrong. But there's understanding the law, and then there's also having that personality where you can say, again, what's right is right and what's wrong is wrong. I understood that what the police did was wrong, and I was going to fight for that. And I did that. And I want to make sure.
1 minute.
What is it?
1 minute left.
Okay. Can I hold my minute for another?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to reserve that for another time.
Okay.
Thank you.
Caleb, as soon as you start, I will start the clock for a 3-minute.
All right, go ahead. So the digital age has changed how we live our lives. And so just so you understand how the process works is a officer gathers the information, puts it in an affidavit, submits it to us for review. Other counties don't have that layer of security. In some counties, they go straight to the judge. We review it and we say, yes, there's probable cause. Let's send it to the judge. Ultimately, it is the judge's decision whether there's probable cause or not, whether they sign the search warrant or not. In the digital age, it's more important than ever because you have a cell phone, and there's a tremendous amount of data that you're constantly creating. Again, one of the recent cases, the Inslee murder, is a double murder where he violently stabbed 2 women to death and burned the house down around them. All of the evidence in that case was gathered from digital means, or most of the evidence, because he burned it up in the house. So the cell phone logs, the Facebook records, the cell phone tower dumps. I had attended training with the Secret Service at the National Computer Forensic Institute, and I'm uniquely trained to determine what data exists, because knowing it exists is half the battle, and how do you get to that data? That is one of the important jobs as the prosecutor moves forward in this digital age. What data exists? How do you get to it? The Fourth Amendment has been around since our founding fathers. They could not have conceived of a cell phone in your pocket. And it has been the Supreme Court over the years giving us rights that we didn't have before. Obviously, when cars were invented, there was no right to privacy until the Supreme Court said, yes, you have a right to privacy in your car, you need a search warrant. When cell phones first came out, you didn't have a right to privacy. In fact, there was a case that came out in the early 2000s that nobody uses their phone in such a way that they should expect privacy. Obviously, that's not the case anymore, and we get search warrants for those things. Knowing what data exists and how to get that data is one of the primary jobs of the prosecutor's office. In the last year and a half, we have done hundreds, if not thousands, of search warrants successfully, and no search warrant signed by my office has ever been overturned by a court. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, so now we're going to move over to the circuit judge. The question that I sent to them is the following. How do you balance the desires and rights of the victims with the range of punishment options you can impose? I'm pretty sure a question like this came because we did see recently with the Supreme Court nomination, there was a lot of hoopla over why certain punishments were given for certain crimes that just didn't seem to fit. So I will default to you, Heather, to start. How do you balance the desires and rights of the victims with the range of punishment options you can impose? And again, we'll do a 3-minute on this if you decide to use full 3 minutes.
Thank you. So I have to begin by being clear about the fact that the Missouri Ethics Commission and our Judicial Ethics Code prohibit me from making any promises about future performance. So as a judge, I can't tell you, and nor can my opponent tell you, how he's going to weigh victim impact, because that's a promise on future performance. But what I can tell you is that when I was a prosecutor, I dealt with victims on a daily basis. And there's 3 main ways in which this can come into play. And I'm assuming that you're meaning in a criminal context because that's the way the question was phrased. The first is when a plea agreement is reached and the victim is in agreement with that plea agreement, in which case I always put my victim forward in the best possible light for them to help convince the judge that this was the right outcome. If there's a plea agreement reached and the victim does not agree with that plea agreement, Missouri has victim rights statutes which clearly mandate the fact that the victim has the right to be heard, not in a diminished capacity, not in any lesser way than the prosecuting attorney, the defense attorney, or anyone else involved in that trial. And so even if a victim didn't agree with me, it was important to me to make sure that they knew that they had a voice, that they felt heard, and that they had time to express their wishes and for the judge to consider that. Finally, in the case of a trial, okay, where there is no agreement and it's up to the judge, you have generally what's called a sentencing phase, in which we work with the victim to bring out their opinion more fully, why they want what they want, the reasons behind that, the history, things that don't come out in a 2-minute statement. And so those are the types of things. When it comes to the weight, both prosecutors and judges and defense attorneys, but particularly judges, have to weigh several factors. Not only the victim's wishes, but they also have a responsibility to the safety of their community, to ensure that that kind of behavior is discouraged, and for any chance of rehabilitation in the future, and what the range of punishment actually is, and what those sentencing alternatives mean in a real sense, not on paper in black and white. And so while a victim's wishes are incredibly important, they cannot be the end-all be-all. And as a prosecutor, I was sure from day one to sit down with my victims and explain
30
to them
seconds.
how the court process works, what their role in it is, what their rights, and to make sure that they had a victim advocate who not only by myself, but would stand up and make sure that they were heard and listened to.
Thank you very much. Can everyone out there hear all right, or do they need to hold the mic a little closer? Just show of hands if everyone can hear all right, especially those in the back. Fabulous. I just wanted to check on that before we continue. All right. I will start your 3 minutes when you are ready to go.
As Heather, as Heather mentioned, there are statutes and there's a constitutional provision that dictates the rights of the victim in criminal proceedings. And what's clear from those statutes and the Article 1, Section 32 of the Constitution is that victims have the right to be informed and heard and involved in the criminal justice system. And what I can do as a judge is to make sure and demand that the prosecutor's office follows that Constitution and that statute. See, in my courtroom, victims will not be bystanders. They will not be looking on as plea deals and cases are disposed of. I will demand that they are heard. You know, the rights of victims are not suspended just because a judge is friendly with the prosecutor or friendly with the defense counsel, or under any other circumstance. The law demands that victims be active participants in this system, and I will make sure that that happens. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Now, admittedly, when it came to the clerks, the challenge I was getting from the question world is that there was a lot of confusion on the circuit court clerks versus county clerks. And so what I was just hoping for to kind of start is a little clarity on the clerk side of things for court versus the county. I know I'd gotten some questions where people were like asking about how do the elections get certified, but I'm pretty sure that's a county clerk issue, not you guys. So what I will, though, ask is, it's obvious that the clerks in the court handle very sensitive documents, as we've shared between search warrants, victims' situations, and criminal situations. And in light of the current news cycle, earlier this summer, we had a leak from the Supreme Court, which one is led to believe happened because of a clerk. So I suppose, aside from just clarifying the role of the circuit clerk, what do you believe you would do to ensure appropriate handling of documents to prevent a unapproved leak of information, as opposed to, I believe there is a procedure called sunshine requests where people can ask for information, but there's a proper channel. So all that to say, if you could clarify your role as circuit clerk versus the county, and then what would you do to ensure the security of personal information so that it is just properly being used between the judges, the prosecuting attorneys, and those that actually need to be involved in a case? And I will start with you, Kayla, and again, we're going to do a 3-minute on that.
So the county clerk is, like you were saying, they take care of the voting administration, giving you all your new voting cards. They issue business license, liquor license. They keep the records of the administration, so such as commission meetings. Those are kept by the county clerk. The circuit clerk, we are more the judicial side. We keep records of all of the criminal cases, search warrants, things such as those. We process small claims to anything from small claims to multi-million-dollar claims. I thought you said something. Sorry, I thought you said something. We handle trials. We handle any kind of criminal, from speeding tickets to capital murder. We handle domestic, such as divorces, child custody, child support order protections. We handle juvenile cases, adoptions. Those things are all handled in the circuit clerk's office. As far as what you were asking on the personal information, employee information being disclosed, is that what you were asking?
Oh, no. So let me pause that for a second there. It was more along the lines of the whole Roe v. Wade. It was a judge's communication intra-officely, and then it got leaked to the general public. And so what the question was is, as circuit clerks, what are you guys doing to ensure that information that should just be getting shared between the prosecuting attorneys and the judges does not go to the general public and end up on, say, social media to create a hoopla versus just working amongst yourselves as part of this judicial team?
So what I would say is, I mean, we have security levels as far as things being scanned into the systems, and that's very important to know whether or not those can be given to the public, because anybody can do a records request and get stuff. And being aware of what can be publicly, or what needs to stay within the office.
Thank you very much. So, Karen, if there's anything that you feel could be piggybacked onto what Kayla started to explain, just to round out the understanding of the circuit clerk, and then I guess the second question to yourself would be, what are the steps that you take to ensure privacy of communications between the appropriate judicial staff so that it doesn't get leaked to the general public, but rather would only follow the appropriate channels to make it out to the people who need it for whichever those requests were utilized? Oh, could you hold the mic a little bit closer, or?
How's this?
Perfect, thank you.
The differences between the circuit clerk and the county clerk. The county clerk is responsible for maintaining public records for the county, such as the clerk keeps the minutes for the commissioners' meeting, and it provides support for the local election process. The circuit clerk is responsible to oversee and maintain records for all divisions of the court for the county. The filing of all civil lawsuits, criminal cases, probate, adoption, juvenile, orders of protection, domestic, summon jurors for jury trials, and takes care of a few municipal courts, and the collections and disbursements for all monies of the court. The circuit clerk is basically the keeper of the court records, and the county clerk is the keeper of the county's public records.
And what steps will be taken to ensure information security, I guess?
I was sad that to hear that the news was leaked from the Supreme Court about Roe versus Wade. I believe there are steps in place that we can have a higher security, such as for juvenile adoptions or closed cases, you know, if they're not or need to be. And that security is in place, so it's not released to the public. It's very limited who can see that. So, high security will take care of a lot of those problems.
Thank you very much. Mr. Beckett has brought a question to my attention. I'm going to hand the mic over to him.
This is for the, is this on? Can you hear me? This is for the prosecutors. It goes back to the Fourth Amendment, and I'd like to maybe keep it a minute. It's twofold. You brought up something that kind of triggered the separation between the sheriff's department, a degree of separation between them and the prosecutor's department. Is it customary for prosecutors to have deputized deputies as their investigators? That's number one. And two, the Fourth Amendment is when you do collect all that data out there, what does the prosecutor's office do to protect the data of others while you're collecting data on the so-called perp or whatever you want to call them that you're investigating? What safeguards are out there for the rest of the general public that data might be caught up in your search? So everybody understand my question? First one, degree of separation. And the second one is when you, like say you search somebody's records as far as emails or messages and that, search warrant. And then during that search warrant, people out there that might be talking to these people, their information is gathered in with that. How do you safeguard that information as far as that goes when it's collected and you receive it from the outside entity? whether it be whatever, Twitter, whatever, if you're doing that search warrant. And the first one, did you guys understand that one? Okay.
All right, so Mr. Cunningham, we'll start with you this time. And as that was kind of two questions, I'll do like a good 3 minutes on that one.
Ready whenever you are.
Oh, you start.
Okay.
And I'll start the clock after you start talking.
So the degree of separation, you cannot fully separate a prosecutor's office from law enforcement. Law enforcement and prosecutors work together all over the state every day. Certainly in my 5 years, both as an assistant prosecutor and an elected, there's been a deputized officer in that office, an investigator role. We have 2 investigators there now that are deputized through the sheriff's office that have arrest powers, that investigate crime or help once a crime is referred to the prosecutor's office, rather, for charging decisions. And I believe that's common throughout the state of Missouri. Pursuant to a search warrant, the data that's gathered, if it is not protected, so the Sunshine Law in Missouri allows data to be discovered. If it is not protected by something, then people could sunshine that information. So for instance, if you wanted to know about something in a search warrant, you could sunshine it from the clerk's office or the highway patrol or something like that and get that data. If there is protected information in there, so for instance, child pornography, we discover a lot of child pornography through search warrants. That information is protected and not subject to the Sunshine Law. We do not just disclose information that we retrieve in a search warrant. However, if somebody does do a sunshine request, they're entitled to that. That's their right as a citizen to know what we're doing, to know what we're gathering. Some information is redacted pursuant to the sunshine request, so names may be redacted, things like that, but that would be more of an appropriate question for a sunshine attorney. We are just housing the data, and then the sunshine attorneys decide what data needs to be redacted or not to comply with the sunshine request. We certainly want people in Camden County to know what their government's doing and to know the information that we're gathering as they're allowed by law under the sunshine request.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Beckett, if I understand the first part of your question, I think what you're asking is that my understanding is that this prosecutor's office currently has investigators who are deputized, but they originate cases in the prosecutor's office.
Yes.
Yes. And my response to that would be that I have been in law enforcement for 22 years. Before that, I was in law enforcement as a dispatcher, a jailer, a records clerk. I have never seen a situation where law enforcement inside a prosecutor's office originated cases. My experience has always been that law enforcement agencies, Lake Ozark Police, Sheriff's Department, whatever, would originate the cases and then forward them to the prosecutor's office for review and charges if deemed appropriate, etc. So I hope that I answered that question. As it relates to when I am the prosecutor, I do intend on having investigators. I can tell you that when I was in the prosecutor's office, we, for the longest period of time, had no victim advocates, and we had no investigator. So the attorneys, we, the prosecutors, were the victim advocates, and we were the investigators. That is very useful. Those people in their employment are fantastic, don't get me wrong. But having a situation, I can tell you that there are victims who are reaching out to me constantly about how they are not being heard by this prosecutor's office. I have law enforcement reaching out to me saying that victims' cases are not being pursued at all by this prosecutor's office. And this is a regular occurrence. You know, I don't want to armchair quarterback every case because I understand that each case is different. But when this is repeated information coming to me from victims and from law enforcement that this prosecutor's office is not paying attention to victims, not pursuing their cases, not giving them information about cases, I just want you all to know that that is not what a prosecutor's office would look like with me in the lead. And one of the main reasons is because I have been with victims. I'm sure you've all heard me talk about being with the grandmother while I was prosecuting her
30 seconds.
3-year-old granddaughter's murder. I mean, when you're working side by side with victims in that capacity, you see it different. My understanding is that the current prosecutor's office policy is that prosecutors do not speak to victims generally because they have victim advocates. And I can tell you that the victims want to hear specifically from that prosecutor, and that will be what will happen when I'm the prosecutor. I'm sorry I didn't.
Okay. Did you want to use your minute to answer how you protect? Okay. So we had, actually, that piggybacks well. I did receive another question that we will direct to the judicial candidates in the vein of search warrants. So the question was, and seeing how we started with Heather the first round going this way, we're going to come back and start with you, Ryan. A search warrant, so the community member's question, I'm just going to read it the way he explained it now. It is kind of a two-parter. So again, I'll do a 3-minute window on this. If you use the whole thing, that's great. If you don't, that's great too. A search warrant is a temporary suspension of a person's constitutional rights. What do you consider adequate circumstances to suspend someone's Fourth Amendment right, comma, what crimes do you believe do or do not warrant this? I hope, does that, hopefully that, does that make sense the way that he worded it?
Sure you want to go first? No, I think we're both going to run into the same issue with regard to how judges are allowed to answer questions, and we're not allowed to answer questions that could prejudice or show a prejudice one way or the other. And so what I can say about search warrants is like the person described it as a suspension of their constitutional rights. And actually it's really a mechanism of the Fourth Amendment that allows for a reasonable search and seizure of property. So it's not, when that happens, it's not technically a suspension of your rights, because it's according to the Constitution how that occurs, as long as it occurs according to the Constitution. And what I can say is that I will make sure that the Constitution is followed of the United States or the state of Missouri, and if a search warrant is deficient in some fashion because of that, I won't grant it. But I can't really say anything more one way or the other than that. Now, one thing you'll notice also tonight is that I'm not likely to take all 3 minutes on most questions. So I think I will come back on the previous question as it relates to sentencing. I think it is important to remember that Heather and I are running for associate circuit judge, and associate circuit judges handle misdemeanor cases. The maximum punishment of a misdemeanor, which is the highest case that we would hear at trial, unless we were specially appointed to some felony case, is 1 year in jail. And so when taking those into consideration, it's not a matter of 5 to 15 or 15 to life or these decisions like that circuit judges handle. We're handling different types of issues. And so while it's still very important to hear victim advocates, we're not dealing with the most heinous crimes that many others have to deal with.
Excellent. I do, and I'm sure that the community also appreciates the clarity of the associate circuit judge versus what a circuit judge is doing. And so obviously this person has some concerns about the constitutional rights. Thank you for addressing that. Heather, absolutely. Please answer how most appropriate you can, provided the limitations that Ryan did express, which would show that you're not being prejudiced. It's like, well, these crimes, they're going down, because that's problematic. But if you could expand on what he did say and or how things like that are perhaps currently handled in the office, we would appreciate it. Again, 3 minutes on that.
Absolutely. So Mr. Bridges is right, which basically is that the second part of that question I can't answer. I'll tell you that I will perform all my duties that are assigned to me as an associate judge faithfully and impartially. As to the second part, search warrants are a huge part of an associate circuit judge's job. Even though we only hear the end of misdemeanor cases, we are the primary point for all search warrants. It's very rare that circuit judges look at search warrants, which means that search warrants for everything from murder, child pornography, reconstruction, and technology-based search warrants come to the associate circuit judge. This is where it gets back to experience and expertise being important. I have been an instructor on search and seizure and search warrants all over the state for the last 7 years. search warrants, and the question writer is right. The Fourth Amendment provides that you are free from unreasonable search and seizures, and it defines exactly how search warrants are to be laid out and the requirements thereof. And it is probable cause supported in writing by an affidavit that there is probable cause that evidence of the crime is there. And so it's the judge's responsibility to go through that. But where the expertise comes in and where it's important is not everything is there's a bloody knife in that house and I need to go get it. Law is ever changing and evolving, and all the questions about technology and law are particularly pertinent when it comes to technology and search warrants. Over the last 5 years, the Supreme Court has sent out a continuous case update on what search warrants require for internet searches, for your phone, for your Facebook, for your TikTok. All of that requires knowledge of what the search warrant requires and how it has to be executed. And the judge's position and their expertise and knowledge and experience is particularly important, because once a judge signs that search warrant, there is a presumption that it's valid, okay? If a judge signs it carelessly or without knowledge, it prohibits or it sets up an appeal. And the worst thing for this county's finances, for the victims' rights, and for the people of this community are for search warrants to be overturned or to be carelessly regarded. And so, yes, associate circuit judges have a tremendous responsibility when it comes to search warrants. And I have the expertise
30
to
seconds.
do that. Just briefly going back to the victim question, Mr. Bridges is right. We handle misdemeanors. However, we also handle bonds for all cases, and we are involved with victims on all cases. And it is important to know the victims' rights statutes, to have a relationship, and to enable that victims feel heard and that they are a participant, while still recognizing that requiring a victim to be an active participant may put them in physical jeopardy from their abuser and other things.
Thank you very much. So as we work our way down the table, you can clap for people, it's all right. It's encouraging. So as we come down, there was, actually, where did I just see that? Aha. So again, because you guys are both have great experience as a circuit clerk, I will ask one question of you, Kayla, and then it's kind of going to be a follow-up question. They're both regarding records. To Karen, it's just the first question to you, Kayla, is how are records currently maintained? 2 minutes.
So right now, we currently maintain our records. Everything's electronic. Anything newly filed electronically in the e-file system. The only time that we do file any type of records is if you're pro se. We do have older records that we are every day turning into electronic files, to where it will be, if somebody calls to request anything, you don't have to go and actually dig out an old paper file. You can just have it right there, print it off, get it certified, and send it to whoever may be requesting those records. Search warrants, we kept them in a file, just filed. Now we do those digital. We didn't do that before, but we have started doing all search warrants digital also.
Excellent. That is a very good segue to Karen. Your question, which piggybacks with that, is what kinds of records can be obtained by the public? And if you could possibly expound, I guess in theory, why would people request court documents in particular? Like if there's, I guess what I'm asking is, if I'm a citizen, why would I want to request certain court documents? And then at the same time, what kind of records can be obtained by the public, and or the process for that? And 2 minutes.
Now? Most records are open to the public. Of course, juvenile, adoptions, NOLI cases, etc. are not. They are closed cases. A lot of people come in and want copies of cases or to look into them because they're doing ancestry. They're looking for, lost relative genealogy or whatever. They'll go to probate cases. They want to see, the history of what we have in Camden County.
Oh, okay. Well, I didn't know that was a short question then. I didn't know how complex that would be or what the reasoning is, but that was one of the questions. What kind of records? Let's see here. Working back down, this time seeing how we had Ryan start, we will have Heather start. What level of relationship is proper between a prosecutor and a judge? If you are friends outside of the workplace, how do you avoid ex parte communications? And I'm asking, please define ex parte communications, because when the email came to me, I'm like, well, that sounds like to me, what I would say is maybe a conflict of interest relationship or something about a case being discussed off duty. So if you would do me a favor as to explain the relationship between a prosecutor and judge, and if you are friends outside of the workplace, how do you avoid these ex parte communications? And if you could please define that for our audience and myself.
Sure.
Thank you.
Ex parte communications are any communications about a case that don't involve all of the parties on the case. And that's not just in criminal cases, that's in all cases. And so, as you might imagine, there are communication about cases outside the courtroom. We do scheduling. We will take up motions via email, but only if all parties are involved. As far as relationships between the parties, you asked specifically about a prosecutor and a judge, but the reality of the fact is this. We practice in a very small bar, which is the amount of attorneys in Camden County. We have less than 20 attorneys across all civil attorneys, all defense attorneys, public defenders, prosecutors, whatnot, and we have 5 judges. We all shop at Walmart and Gerb's, Hy-Vee. A lot of us have kids that go to the same school. A lot of us have worked together on and off over the years. So do we have friendly relationships with the other members in our bar? Absolutely we do. Absolutely we do. The fact of the matter is this. It is incumbent upon every member, not just of the judiciary, but of the bar, to be able to put aside those personal relationships when it comes to your job. So, not just between a judge and a prosecutor, but a prosecutor and a defense attorney, civil attorneys and the judge, and civil attorneys and themselves. The fact of the matter is, we all live here. We all have relationships with each other, but we have sworn an oath to the Constitution and to the people of Camden County. I take that oath seriously. I take my job seriously. My relationships, both with the people in this community and the other members of the bar, stop at the door to the courtroom.
30 seconds.
At that time, I'm a judge. My oath and my duty is to the Constitution and the people of Camden County.
Thank you.
And, could you please repeat the question?
Sure. That was, what level of relationship is proper between a prosecutor and a judge was how this was initially worded. Heather, thank you for bringing up the size of the community. And so I guess you could almost say between the relationships of all parties involved. If you are friends outside of the workplace, how do you avoid the ex parte communications, which, as Heather explained, was if you're discussing a case, you are, my understanding, supposed to have everyone who's involved in the case be in on the information loop. So there isn't, I guess the term would be backroom deals or shady business.
Okay. I think I will start on the ex parte issue as well. The important thing to remember about judges is that before trial, in either a civil or a criminal case, they're supposed to come into that trial as fresh as possible without having been advocated as much. And so it's important that when the communications prior to trial, even if they're with everybody, if both defense and, well, not defense, I'll say plaintiff and defendant in a civil matter, if they're just negotiating and they're saying, Judge, here's an email, we're going to continue the case because her client's not working out. Or that can still be an ex parte communication because you're advocating a specific position outside of a trial setting. And so it's important in a bar setting, amongst the people in the bar, that when you are having these communications via email, it's just related to the issues at hand. And how you prevent that is that you as a judge, you demonstrate that and you state that to the bar specifically, that you're not going to have those type of ex parte communications. As far as relationships between a judge and other members of the bar, I think it's important that we want to have judges that are members of the community. We want them to be out and involved. You can't just be on a bench and then go home and then come back to the bench and then go home. It's not, and so what you have to, as a community, what you have to do is to, hopefully by the actions a person does during their course of their career and as they're in the community, that they have shown you that you can trust them to be able to set aside those types of relationships and to issue judgments based on just the law and the facts. Thank you.
Thank you. And this may just sound like a silly clarification from me, but as you guys are discussing bar, we're talking about the legal organization, not that you're at O'Malley's Pub in the evening discussing the cases at the bar.
It could be 2 bars.
Hey, it could be 2 bars. All right, so we're going to come back down here to the prosecuting attorney. Let's see here. As I am new to the area, I thought this was a really good question. And I only caught bits and pieces when you guys were speaking at the Republican Club, and unfortunately I had to duck out before I got to hear everything. What is your record with jury trials, was one of the specific questions asked. I apologize. We started with him last, so then if we could start with you, Rochelle. So again, what is your record with jury trials? 2 minutes, and whenever you're ready.
Thank you. I've spent half my career as a prosecutor, the other half in private practice. I've never lost a jury trial. As a prosecutor, I've always had a conviction. Like I explained at the Republican Club, I've never had anybody walk out the door on a full acquittal on any of my cases as a prosecutor. How many is that? I'm not really sure, because I was doing it for a really long time, but a lot. And that includes burglary, robbery, murder. These are all in front of a jury. DWI. I mean, it just couldn't go on and on. As far as being able to represent my clients effectively as a defense attorney and still be able to effectively get the verdict for my clients, that just shows how much I love about our criminal justice system, truly. The jury trial is exceptional. Our criminal justice system is not perfect, but our jury trial system is enviable throughout the world. And sometimes the prosecutors, at least in my specific incident, made a mistake. Maybe a victim lied or something, and I was able to get that in front of that jury, and they found my clients not guilty. So I have a perfect conviction rate as a prosecutor, but even more than just numbers, I mean, that matters. Being an effective prosecutor in jury trials, of course, is very important. But it's also just as much, like I explained before, as having that relationship with that victim and having that relationship with law enforcement. Working with law enforcement, I appreciate them, I support them, and the same goes with being able to work with victims and making sure they understand the process and having that one-on-one relationship.
Thank you very much. Mr. Cunningham, to you as well. What is your record with jury trials?
So I've only ever lost one jury trial in my career as prosecutor, and I lost one as defense attorney. I've won all the others, very proud to report. We've won 2 jury trials this year alone. Of course, not everything. I was told a long time ago, if you win every trial, you're not going to trial enough. Because you can certainly try to plead things down and cherry pick, and that's not what we do in my office. My opponent talks about her conviction rate. She has not tried a case in Camden County since before they rewrote the criminal code. And I want to correct the record on something else. My office absolutely meets with victims. We have 2 full-time victim advocates that spend every moment of every day talking with victims, working with victims. And I meet with victims. My attorneys meet with victims. My entire team cares deeply about what happens to victims. Now, thank you. When Ms. Christensen before was given the opportunity to resign from the prosecutor's office many years ago, there were 900 cases left behind by her. 900 cases that were not charged.
That is an absolute lie.
Hold on.
That is a lie. You
Yeah.
cannot lie about that. That is not true, period.
900 cases that were left behind
That is not true.
that victims will never see justice on, that the statute of
You
limitations.
are lying about it. That
Ms.
is not
Christensen,
true. That
please
is
behave
not-
yourself.
Okay, guys, both of you. So here's the thing. I don't want to know about the 900 cases beforehand. I'm asking about your specific case history.
Yes.
So let's just stick to the task at hand here. Thank you.
Again, I think I've used my time. Thank you.
Not a good look.
Can I use my minute right now?
As he did bring up the allegation that there were 900 cases left behind, I will give you the minute to address that issue.
Thank you very much. Let me explain. I was the chief deputy in the prosecutor's office through 2014. As happens politically, my boss lost the election, and the new prosecuting attorney replaced me, as they do politically in Camden County. And I thank God for that, because there's a lot of reasons that I was able to go spend time with my children while they were in high school, etc. I have heard this outlandish rumor that I had in my office some wall, and there was 900 files left behind behind that wall. I know that's a lie, specifically because as of 2009, we didn't have files for cases anymore. Our files were actually all digitally scanned into the computer. And even though that prosecutor told me that he was bringing in a new chief deputy, because I'm a person of integrity, I continued to show up every day and work until the very end of that year.
Time.
I mean, 900 cases is like 2.5 years worth of stuff that nobody paid attention to and nobody noticed that I wasn't
Thank you.
keeping track of. It's ridiculous.
Thank you. That's gotten a little exciting. Sure. Well, got several here. I'm just trying to find out maybe one that's a little less exciting. But let's see here. We're going to go over to the let's see here. Circuit judge. Now, there was something that was brought up by one of the emails. It says, how do you feel about judicial immunity? Could you please define this for our audience? And do you believe there are cases in which this benefit should be voided? And we started with Heather last time, so we'll start with Ryan.
So, in general, judicial immunity and governmental immunity, as they sometimes go together, is basically a government actor cannot be held liable for their actions done in pursuant of their duties. Situations where that doesn't apply is if the actions are outside the scope of those duties or if they are done through fraud. And I think that's all I can say about that.
All right. Fair enough.
Sometimes you don't exactly know how much you can talk, and I think that's about all I can go on that one.
Nope, we appreciate the reply. Heather, is there any other way you can, for clarity on this? How do you feel about judicial immunity? Is there anything in the definition that Ryan left lacking? And do you believe there are cases in which this should be voided? Again, that might be a question you can't answer because of the position. When you start, I'll go ahead and hit the timer for 2 minutes.
Thank you. I think Mr. Bridges did a good job explaining that. When he talks about things that are outside the scope of the job or done through fraud, basically the idea behind judicial immunity is that people make mistakes in their job. We're not going to get every judgment exactly right. We're going to do our very best. And that a judge should not be held civilly liable unless it was done through malice, fraud, or as gross incompetence, okay? And in those cases, absolutely, judicial immunity is waived, and it should be. Because not only is that judge not doing a good job, but they have betrayed their oath to the Constitution and their oath to the people of Camden County, and they should be held accountable. I'll just use my last bit of time to address the other stuff that I ran out of time on. Basically, just as a final word, while I certainly agree with the spirit behind Mr. Bridges wanting to include and make victims an active part of the associate level, and I agree, and they should be invited and made to feel welcome and heard. The fact of the matter is, a decade of dealing with victims lets me know through experience that criminal cases occur with an alarming rate of appearances. Requiring victims to come to every court date to be heard can endanger their job, causes significant child care stress, can cause trauma to their mental health. I have had victims take attempts on their own life because of the stress caused by criminal cases. It can put them in danger from an abuser if they are required to stand up and give testimony. And so those kind of real-world concerns are important, and knowing that can literally mean the difference between life or death to somebody. Thank you.
Thank you. So as we head down to our clerks, I would say here, so this was more of a kind of a general question, but I think it's a very good one, is as clerks and your experience working in the court system, what specific issues do you think are pressing on our community/county at this time, and how do you believe you will play a part in addressing these issues? And I believe, please remind me who we started with last time. Okay, so we'll start with Karen this time around. Thank you.
And I'm sorry, would you repeat the question?
Oh, sure. So what's, as you guys have had experience in this area, and of course you've been surrounded probably by the courts, so there's perhaps a perspective you all would have about our community that the average person on the street may not have. So the question is, what specific issues do you think are pressing on our community/county at this time, and how do you believe you will play a part in addressing these issues?
I believe one of the challenging things that's come into Camden County is we're rapidly growing. And if we get casinos in, we're going to grow even more, and with that, so is the crime. And therefore, there will be more caseload, more things to do in the circuit clerk's office. There needs to be more cross-training so that we can keep up with this growing need.
Excellent. That does, well, that kind of piggybacks to what would you like to change or improve upon elected. So it's kind of interesting. You kind of answered a secondary question there with the addition. So your concern is the increased growth of our community, and therefore there will be a higher burden on the system, and you're wanting to make sure people are getting cross-trained and additional education and skills. Is that what I'm following?
That's what you're following, yes.
Okay, great. Kayla, same question to you. Seeing how you're actually already in-house, what do you see as, what do you think are the pressing issues on the community/county, and how do you believe you will play a part in continuing to fill the vacancy that Joe has left, should the community decide that they want to have you in this position?
So our crime has grown, especially since COVID. We see a lot of cases, a lot more criminal cases, and we also have absorbed municipalities. So we also are dealing with more ticket processing, and with the more people, more tourists here, and you see more tickets that are being issued. So that's one of the main things that I see.
And I apologize. How best will you help the office to address these issues?
Okay, so what I would do is we are cross-trained, but I would continue with the cross-training. That is very vital to any office, and we did find that out with the height of COVID. We had lots of people out from sicknesses, and we had people that were cross-trained, and then we have continued that tremendously.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Excuse me. Can I use my other minute?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Earlier, when you asked the question on what kinds of records that are requested.
Yes.
Can I answer or elaborate on that?
Sure, absolutely. Do you feel you needed 2 minutes or 1 minute?
We can start with the minute.
Okay, we'll go with the minute.
It probably won't take much longer than that. So some of the things that I see as far as requests for records are on a pretty much daily basis are PC requests from our news outlets and radio stations. We get lots and lots of those. Another thing is some cases are closed. So if somebody gets a SIS probation, after 2 years, that drops off their record. But some employers that these people are going to and they are in their interview process, they let them know that they've been on probation and they have to come to our office and request those records, which you can do if it's a closed case as long as we verify it is you. But that is some of the things that we get requests for in the office.
Oh, thank you very much. So I'm actually going to jump over to the PA table as Les has brought to my attention. He has a question for the two of you.
Yes, for the prosecuting attorneys, think about this in a moment, is what is the most important duty, if I was asking you, or I am asking you, what is the most important duty that you would say is the prosecuting attorney? And just summarize that for me, Caleb.
Okay. The most important duty of the prosecuting attorney is to represent Camden County, represent victims, and represent law enforcement. It is a balanced approach. It is to get criminals off the street, but to weigh the input of victims, to weigh the input of law enforcement, and to get the best outcome you can. There's a lot of factors that go into every case.
Okay, now I want to ask you, what keeps you from accomplishing that?
What keeps me from being able to weigh every case?
No, you said that's the most important thing that you say is the responsibility of the prosecuting attorney. So what keeps you from accomplishing that?
Well, I do think we accomplish it. It's a weighing job. And so there's different things that have to be weighed all the time. Maybe you don't have the best evidence in this case, so you have to make a better offer. Or maybe the victim is traumatized to the point where they don't want to testify, and the defendant has the right of confrontation, so you know you can't go to trial on that case, so you have to try to work out a plea deal. Or you have a really good case, and so you can go harder on this case, and you weigh the input of the victims and your situation. Or maybe an officer has passed away, or the case changes. Cases are living things that evolve throughout time. Certainly the backlog caused by COVID has caused complications. We tried a case fairly recently where 2 of the people that were supposed to testify had passed away. And so that makes the case more complicated. And to get to that end result, what justice, approximation of justice looks like in our criminal system requires all of these factors to be weighed all the time. And that's what me and my team do every day with every case.
Okay. Rochelle, the same thing. What would you categorize the most important part of the prosecuting attorney job?
Holding criminals accountable for their crimes.
Okay, and what would keep you from accomplishing that?
So I was in the ICU with my dad, and there was nurses, there was a doctor who showed up once a day, there was people around, and we were getting tidbits of information from different people. The actual decision maker, which was the doctor, who wasn't really around a lot, that was maybe once a day, and it dawned on me that this is similar to our criminal justice system from the perspective of victims. They feel like the person who's in charge is not really speaking to them. They love the victim advocates, absolutely, but the victim advocates don't make the final choices. There is a sense in our community that criminals are not being held accountable. There's a sense in our community that cases are being started by this prosecutor's office but not finished. There's a sense in our community that plea deals are being made on cases that should never be made.
Yeah, I understand that, but what about the responsibility that you have? What keeps you from What would keep you from accomplishing what's the most important part of the job?
There was nothing that kept me from accomplishing holding criminals accountable to the best of my ability.
Okay.
Now, there are scenarios whereby, like, for example, that victim that I was describing in this system, and then you tell them you may have to wait 4 or 5 years for justice, if you can even imagine that, right? I mean, so each case is as unique as the situation. Each attorney is as unique as those doctors. Each witness is as unique as those nurses. Every case is different. And that's why that experience and that integrity matters so much. But it's also just a personality of being willing to dig your heels in and make a decision that you're going to do that.
Thank you. Well, what I was hoping to do is, and I have a couple of minutes here, I think between the way, see, the fun thing is, as they're responding to question A, they may actually be kind of addressing some of the other questions I've had. So as I'm bouncing around to see what we haven't heard an angle on, I believe that I have pretty much kind of come to the end of the list that had been submitted to me. So what I'd like to do is, we do have a microphone available here. If anyone would like to come forward and ask a question, again, the ground rules are very simple. I want you to ask a question pertaining to the position that they are running for, so that it can be answered by both parties. All right? So does anyone have a question for the Office of Prosecuting Attorney, the Office of Assistant District or Assistant Circuit Judge, or the Office of Circuit Clerk? Are there any questions that are addressing the office of, either a question of how something is done or why something is done? Are there any questions from you guys, the audience, that we haven't covered, perhaps something you've thought of during this process? If anybody wants to raise their hand or step forward.
Can I just ask from here?
We've got a microphone right there, so if you are having trouble with mobility, I will come down to you and bring you the microphone if you wish.
I think I can talk loud enough that
Can you guys hear her all right?
it's to the clerks.
Here, hold on. I'm gonna come down and bring the mic, because I know we do have a gentleman doing some recording, so we want to make sure we catch the audio. And that's the advantage of me being wireless right now.
I can go up there if I need to. I just.
Oh, it's quite all right. You, sir, hang tight.
Okay, this is to the clerks. I noticed, Kayla, you never mentioned probate when you was talking about records. Do you know the duties of a probate clerk?
I'm familiar with the duties of the probate clerk. I've clerked for the judge during probate cases. I know they're very sensitive, with a lot of sensitive information. There's a variety of, whether it be for 96-hour holds, whether it be for guardianship, or for just probate and matter as far as somebody's passed away and their belongings are in probate.
Okay, it was for both of you. I was probate clerk at Camden County for 19 years, and I felt like often I got overlooked for promotions and raises because no one knew about the probate and what your duties were. So my question really is, how will you handle promotions and raises for your clerks? You always hear about criminal, civil, divorces, but nobody mentions probate.
How I would look at promotions and so on is by your ability to work with others, whether that's to train and an easy trainer, what positions that you know or divisions that you know, whether you clerk for judges, just how much you know of in the office.
But do you know how much a probate clerk has to do and how much she knows?
Yes.
Karen, if you are elected and you have a probate clerk working under you, how would you handle I'm guessing the job description, handling, and promotion? Is that what I'm understanding?
Which is raises.
Okay. So how would you handle the advancement of the probate clerks under your authority?
I am familiar with the probate clerk and their duties. I have taken probate classes, And I realize it's extremely complicated and hard job, and I think that raises and titles should be given for the job level that they're at, and a probate clerk should be receiving probate clerk pay, which is higher than most pay levels. So I think it should be awarded accordingly.
Thank you very much. Seeing how I'm standing down here, is there anybody else that wants to flag me over? Or I have no problem thanking our guests and having us disperse, but that is entirely up to you as we are hosting this for you. Yes? Oh, absolutely. If there's no more questions. Oh, hold on a second.
When you accept your official office, the prosecuting attorneys, do you put your hand on the Bible to say, I tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in everything in every aspect of your job that you do?
That is not the oath that we take. We do place our hand on a Bible and swear an oath to uphold the Constitution and demean ourselves to it. But that is the oath that you swear to be a witness in a case, the one you just quoted.
So, what is the oath?
To faithfully demean yourself to the Constitution of the state of Missouri.
That's what you say?
The gist of it, yes, ma'am.
Thank you for the clarification on that. Any other questions from any audience members? All right, well, I'm going to go ahead and give each candidate a 2-minute closing window. You don't have to use all 2 minutes. If you wrap up early, that is great. And we will actually start, we're going to bounce to the middle and then over, and we will close with the young ladies that we opened with today. So, Ryan, if you would like to start, your 2-minute closing begins as soon as you start talking.
I think I'm going to end with circling back to the first question because we seem to keep on getting to it. I don't know if Heather misheard me or unintentionally kind of mischaracterized exactly what I was talking about with regard to the victims. I'm not going to force victims to come to court. I'm just going to ensure that the victims' rights are honored if they desire to exercise them. So if they want to be there, I'm going to make sure that the prosecutor's office is taking the steps according to the Constitution of the state of Missouri and the statutes related to victims' rights that they are allowed to be there. Now, to my closing. Like I said, I'm a lifelong resident of Camden County. I was born here. I'm going to die here. I think that lately there have been a lot of appointments in these positions because of retirements, because of judges moving on and going and so forth. And as a result, there's been a lack of consistency in the position of associate circuit judge in this county. I would like to stop that type of circle. I want to only be the associate circuit judge for Camden County. If I'm elected, I am not going to seek any other elected position for the rest of my career. It would be my last job until the voters of Camden County tell me they don't want me to be there anymore. And so because of that, I would want and request your vote on August 2nd. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ryan. Heather, whenever you start, I will start your time.
Thank you. Very quickly, there are two things that I wanted to touch on that we didn't quite get to in questions today. We've talked a lot about criminal law today and experience. For the last nearing on a year and a half, I have handled virtually all of the family law cases in Camden County. I handle restraining orders, civil cases, landlord, tenant, you name it, probate. I have handled hundreds upon hundreds of cases within Camden County that are civil. I have experience. I've handled them from start to finish. I've gone to extensive training to make sure that I'm a good judge in those matters. And I invite you all to come to the courts. Courts in Missouri are always open. See what you think. Get a read on how you think I run my courtroom. And if you approve, I'd ask for your vote on August 2nd. The other thing that I'm proud of is in 2017, Camden County started treatment courts. I've been a founding member of the treatment courts in Camden County. One of the reasons that I was persuaded to seek this position when it became open is because I wanted to ensure that those treatment courts continued to succeed. And so now I am the presiding judge for the DWI and the drug treatment courts, and I assist with the Veterans Treatment Court in Camden County. I wasn't lucky enough to be born here, but this is the community that my husband and I chose. My kids are 8th generation Ozarkians. They were born here. This is my home by choice. And I have dedicated my entire career to the service of Camden County, and I hope to be able to continue to do so. This is the job that I chose. This is where my heart is. And it's because I get to work with the citizens of Camden County, not just at the end of the matter in a prosecution case, but from the very beginning, from family disputes, from neighbor disputes, from landlord-tenant, from small claims, to make sure that we can make our community the best possible community to live in, especially as we go through the growth and the changing times. So I'm honored to have been selected to serve as your county judge for the last year and a half. I'm asking that you give me the honor to continue to serve in that capacity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Heather. We're going to continue to move down the table. Mr. Cunningham, I will start the clock when you start your closing.
It has been the great privilege of my professional career to serve the last year and a half as your prosecuting attorney. I'm asking for your vote on August 2nd to continue the amazing work that my team and I have done. We've solved a 36-year-old cold case that loomed over this county for decades. We have put a double murderer in jail. We have given 3 life sentences this year alone, all while campaign season's going on, all while we have never stopped doing the people's business. I work with some of the most amazing people that I've ever met in my life, and that includes the men and women of law enforcement. I have an amazing bond with them over the years. We certainly give each other a hard time sometimes. We have done more cases than any other prosecutor's office in Camden County history. Last year alone, we charged 5,000 individual criminal charges, and we did $300,000 worth of restitution last year alone. The men and women that I have the great privilege of working with are heroes. The men and women of law enforcement who serve this community are heroes. And I am proud to say that we have worked together to grow, to meet the great boom of tourism and people that we've had here at the lake these last few years, both as an assistant prosecutor and a prosecuting attorney. I had the great privilege of being one of the founding prosecutors on the Camden County Treatment Court, both DWI, Veterans, and Drug Court. Those programs are doing amazing work for the county. We were deeply honored last year to be given the DWI Hero of the Year Award for the entire state of Missouri. Our work is continuing, and I encourage you to go to my website, cunninghamforprosecutor.com, where you can read more or read some of the news articles about our great accomplishments that we've done the past year and a half. I look forward to continuing to represent you, victims, their families, and law enforcement into the distant future here in Camden County. I believe we live in one of the most amazing places in God's earth, and that is why all over the country people are trying to move here as fast as they can. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cunningham. Rochelle, I'll start your time whenever you're ready.
I'm here tonight with my husband, Rob. My son, Chase, is just finishing up his sophomore year at Hannibal LaGrange, and my daughter, Grace, just finished up her first year at the United States Naval Academy. All 3 of them will tell you that I am a passionate person. I'm passionate about not owing anyone anything. That's why I'm not taking a dime. I'm passionate about being pro-life because I'm adopted, and my life had value in the womb, and I believe that. I'm passionate about the prosecutor race, and I'm promising you that I will bring that exact same passion to you if you are hit by a drunk driver. I will bring that same passion to you if your daughter is sexually assaulted. I will bring that same passion to you because it matters to you, and it matters to the rest of our community. I am sick and tired of people coming up to me and saying that nothing is happening in Camden County. I am passionate about making sure that there is a change, a noticeable change in our community when I take leadership on January 1st, and I would appreciate your vote. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And as you guys help to open everything up, we're going to have you go ahead and close us down, and we'll start with Kayla, and I will start your time when you start your closing.
So I have been working for Joe McAwee in the Circuit Clerk's office for nearly 5 years. I am familiar with the current programs and operations in the office. I have the passion to serve the citizens of Camden County. The Circuit Clerk's office is an important position. I feel like the justice system is like a puzzle. The pieces include the sheriff's office, the prosecutor's office, judges, attorneys, and the circuit clerk's office. I believe the justice system falls apart without all the pieces working together. And I have a very good working relationship with all the pieces of this puzzle. I feel it is very vital to our county to have knowledgeable candidate run this office. And not only am I that person, but I am being endorsed by your longtime circuit clerk, Joe McAwee. I'd appreciate your vote on August 2nd.
Thank you very much, Kayla. And Karen, whenever you're ready, I'll start your time.
Experience in this job is tremendous. It carries a lot of responsibility to oversee the employees and keep the wheels of justice running smoothly. The circuit clerk is a partisan position as any other elected official's position in this county. It is important who we vote into that office. Camden County is a truly conservative county, and I believe the citizens want to elect someone in that position who aligns with their beliefs and morals. I know I can do that. They don't want someone who crosses party lines just to advance their career. It's time for new leadership. This office has been ran by the same eyes and ears for the last 2 decades. I think that's enough time to become complacent and stagnant in leadership. And I do believe there are some ways that the office could make some changes to save taxpayer money and improve efficiency. My previous experience in the circuit clerk's office gives me an incredible amount of knowledge of the duties of this office. I have proven that I can make strong management decisions and communicate effectively. I can lead an office environment of kindness, professionalism, and efficiency. When I was growing up, my dad always told me if I wanted anything in life, I was going to have to work for it. I will continue to work hard during this campaign, and I intend to work hard for the citizens of this county after I'm elected. My name is Karen Clapton, and I am the person that you can trust to be the next Camden County Circuit Clerk, and I'm asking for your vote on August 2nd.
Well, thank you very much for coming out to have this spirited conversation for our community. I also want to thank all of you in our community for coming out and understand that you guys are definitely going to be key people in influencing your spheres of influence. I recommend that whomever you may be rooting for also review the various Facebook pages, websites that were mentioned, etc., and follow them through. And don't forget to get out and vote on August 2nd. Thank you so much for coming today.